Yep, they will ruin you. Absolutely, they will. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sass Show. This is going to be complicated just because I want to make sure that my background can be seen. I should have made it a little smaller, I guess. I'm not a Swiftie, but I'm old. Don't me, grumpy old man. You're old too. We're both too old to be Swifties. Hi, Renee. That's not true. There's no age limit. I think there's Swifties that are older than us. That was ageist. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna find the best place for this. I'm just gonna switch my camera around. Anyhow, yeah, we're just gonna do this for now till I can figure out another solution to make sure that we are seeing stuff. Anyhow, so this evening I am having awareness. Sunday was the 1 year anniversary of my husband taking his own life. Now, we were in fact um, estranged for about 10 years, but we talked frequently. And so we weren't like not in contact with one another. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about this really tough topic this evening. So, trigger warning, some people I understand may not be able to handle this topic specifically. And I do get that. I understand that. So, in case I get it. No hard feelings, no hate. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to the Sash Show. Still can't do it. Before y'all answer that question, one of the reasons why I'm trying to so hard to get my background fixed is because this evening, any gifts that I get, me personally, any gifts that I get, and if anyone gives any money to my Cash App tonight, I'm going to donate it to translifeline.org, which is a support line for transgender people. It's a peer support line, so I'm going to donate to that. And any gifts that I get this evening. No, it's in my bio. Cash App in bio. Lies. All right, now y'all are sending gifts. Thank you. I appreciate that. As I was saying, how's everyone doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear
And
that.
same for me, Sass. Anything that shows up in mine is good.
All right, so Karen said she's also going to donate any gifts that she gets to translifeline.org as well. Renee says she's tired. Hey, Anna, welcome to the Sash Show tonight. How
Somebody
you
is
doing?
really
Hey,
loud.
Sass.
Or is that me? Hold on.
I think that's you.
I gotta leave and come
It's you.
back. I'll be right back. I have
I
another
asked
live in
people
my
not
view.
to send me any gifts and just to send it to the Cash App,
Yeah, same.
please.
No gifts.
Yep, same
Okay,
with me.
no problem. I don't know what Hollywood 3600 is saying. Gender, we're talking about self-unaliving awareness. Um, and I definitely want. I think we can share different stories of how it's affected us. I do have some like information that I learned yesterday. One of the things that I found really interesting out of the data that I got, and maybe it's just interesting to me because I often participate in my friend Lita's live, where she often talks about transgender issues, and people constantly come in there talking about mental health and the mental health of the transgender community, and how supposedly that transgender is causing these issues. Actually, the demographic that is most likely to unalive themselves are middle-aged white men.
That's pretty shocking, but
Hmm.
not so much at the same time because men's mental health in this country has been struggling for a while.
Yeah. Well, and then there's also the issue of the patriarchy and misogyny all contribute. They really contribute to that statistic overall because men are expected to bury their feelings inside, and that harms them. FJ Cell said they attempted when they were 32. I'm glad you're still here. Hey, Lita.
Hi.
So that
We'll
was a
see his
fun
loneliness.
live right there.
Oh,
Hey,
I know. I
Rita.
came in at the end. Men don't like to talk. Well, and that is, it's stigmatized. Women attempt it more often, and men are successful more often. That's also true. Um, in 2021, by the way, there were in the United States 48,183 people succeeded, because 2021 is the most accurate statistics. 12.3 million people thought about it,
That
3.5
you
million
can
people had a plan, and 1.7 million attempted.
Hmm?
And
And
I
that
will say that the situation in the world did unfortunately move that along. A lot of people that I got to them, unfortunately, but
mhm.
it doesn't change the fact that it's always been there. I mean, people
It's correct,
didn't
man.
unalive because of the pandemic. It just made the possibly the voices tell like in the bad voices
Well,
a little louder because of
the
isolation.
there was
If that
actually a
makes sense.
decrease from 2019 to
Really?
2020.
Huh.
And then it went up in 2020
Surprising.
from 2020, from the end of 2020 through 2021, it went up by 4%.
Oh, okay.
So, and the highest increase was among indigenous people of the United States and Alaska.
I'm trying to make you have room.
And it's the 11th leading cause of death in the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. Just some statistics there that are not great. And Press Fairy said her father showed his depression with anger. The thing is um, men do choose more violent means. That's why they're more successful. And because of the way our country pretty much views whatever being a man is, means that they won't talk about their feelings. They won't seek mental health help because it's stigmatized. And so that's one of the things I think is important about this live is talking about these topics is to help with this to destigmatize. And I don't know how many of you guys are willing to share this information. I will share that I personally have I've not attempted, but there are three separate occasions in my life that I had a plan to do so. It's over or that's up to you.
I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor. I have 9 months and 21 days survival
I'm
since my
very glad
last
you're here.
attempt.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Doug.
Yes, I'm very glad you're here too.
Thanks.
I have
Yeah.
attempted 3 times unsuccessfully,
I'm
obviously.
also glad you're here.
My last time is
Yes.
after I lost my vision and my job and everything in my life, and my life changed overnight.
I have never made a plan or tried, but there definitely have been moments where I considered and thought things and then kind of the only thing that stopped me was looking around at my life and going, I don't want my family to have to fucking pick up the pieces of my life.
Well, yeah, I mean that is definitely a huge factor in reasons why I hadn't is like having to be, leaving behind family.
No, it wasn't
Valerie,
even that. It
listen,
was literally the mess of my
Valerie,
life.
um, there, there is nothing within faith that will save you from mental health disorders. You can find happiness in faith, sure, but if you have a mental health disorder like chemicals, depression, there's no amount of faith that will save you from that. So tying mental health to faith and suggesting that those that are suffering are doing so because they're faithless is actually stigmatizing mental health, which causes people not to get help, which ultimately causes more people to self-unalive. That's a ridiculous statement. And then I also obviously like the reason I'm gonna go back on topic here. The reason that I'm hosting this live is because Sunday was the 1 year anniversary of my husband's self-unaliving. And even though um we had been estranged for about 10 years, we talked frequently. We kept, in contact. We checked in on one another's lives, making sure that we just seeing how each other's doing. But he didn't tell me that he was struggling to that point. Um, my understanding is that he had lost his job a few months beforehand and was having a hard time finding another job. And so ultimately, that's what led to him taking his own life. And it left behind. It's very difficult. Tanis, hi. Sorry, I got very excited. Valerie, and I'm saying that attaching spirituality and religion to a topic like self-unaliving is causing harm. It's not doing good. I don't, maybe, okay, maybe. The chemicals in a person's brain have nothing to do with evil demon spirits. Anyhow, I know me personally, there's not a day that hasn't gone by that I haven't thought about him. I was playing the verb pipe, the freshman, because that song is about self-unaliving, and that song frequently makes me think of him because um, he left us all behind. I don't really talk about it with like anyone ever, which is a lot of that song is talking about like ignoring it and just moving, like people moving on like it didn't happen. Um, and I don't really talk about it because it's a difficult topic.
I thought that song was about abortion, but it could be
Yeah,
both.
but in the song, the girl takes a week's worth of Valium and slept
Oh,
forever.
okay. So
It is.
it's both.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's both.
Now that you say that.
Valerie, I think you need to stop talking on here because what you're doing is very harmful. Mental illness is not a choice. You cannot choose to be happy when you have mental illness.
So, let's just
The
mute
chem
Valerie and not kick her out, and then Valerie can sit and listen and learn about the impacts. I went to church for a very long time in my life, and I can assure you, it did nothing to help with my own depression. In fact, I often questioned why it was that uh, God didn't fix it, and that's because God isn't going to fix it. Medication and therapy is what helps.
Therapy is what
and
helps.
what does that say to the family if you're going to demonize someone who does that? What does that say to the family that loved that person and looked up to that person? And you're going to, in the worst moments of their life, trying to live without a person that was so important to them, you're going to call them a demon? That's just cruel.
It is. And for people who are struggling with mental health, then they're told that, oh, it's the demons that are making you want to do this. Frequently, churches will try to say that they don't need help, they don't need medication or therapy, they just need God. And then they don't get help. Guess what? They're not here anymore. And on top of that, there's an immense amount of guilt that people put on themselves in those religious communities when they're told that it's the evil spirits. Like, what am I doing that's not good enough so that God isn't protecting me? It's a vicious cycle that ultimately just ends in more self-unaliving.
I just want to add, I want to thank you guys for bringing that up because I'm also the family member of somebody who did unalive themselves. In 2020, my nephew passed away,
Mm.
and he was far from demonic. He was the sweetest, kindest, most loving boy you'd ever want to meet. So when I read that,
And
it hurts.
yeah, that's ridiculous, right? Like It's not okay. So my bestie, my best friend Jen, the Con, your mom, she had told me this afternoon about a creator who did unalive himself a few days ago, and he had made a video, and he hey he I actually wanted to play the video. I just didn't get it queued up. I don't, anyway, he successfully took his own life. He had made a video talking about how he wanted to remember for being a creator, very funny creator, who Jen, if you want to put that name in the chat there, because I think his name was Joe Vitti. I can't remember the exact name. I watched it and watched some of his videos. Very funny guy. Took his own life. He wasn't demonic. He was having struggles. He had addiction, and ultimately, addiction is usually a symptom, for me anyway, of mental health issue. VITY. Von Vitti. Joe Von Vitti is his name. And he made a goodbye video on TikTok. Oh, it's VITTY? I lied. Von Vitti is his name. You can go check out his page. His page is still up. Very funny guy.
A lot of people though that are that funny guy, it's hiding. You look at Robin Williams, you look at all of these people that were, oh my God, he was always so, jovial, and it's hiding something. So
Often.
check on your friends, not just the ones that seem down in the dumps. Check
Like
on
Robin
the
Williams. My friend Maddie, they just said, guys, I'm officially engaged, by the way. I forgot to tell you guys, congratulations. And then my friend Tana said about being in a horrible place. You did tell me that, Tana's when, listen, I don't want to talk too much about feelings. That's a lie. This whole live will be about feelings. It is Von Video. I was right. You know, I've spent a good part of many years in a dark place, but a good part of, um, I don't know, the last 2 years, there's been a lot of ups and downs for me, since the shooting. For several months after that, like the sound of PTSD, I don't know how else to explain it, inside my head was just so loud all the time that I frequently was like, I don't know how like much longer I can take this. But then of course I was going to a therapist, right? Whenever I get into that sort of mind frame, I reach out to people immediately. That's just a coping mechanism that I developed when I was in my 20s, is to like reach out to people and talk to them. Um, it is PTSD is, thank you, Amber, for for you know, make that it's just so loud in my head. And then, throughout the last 2 years, it's like a roller coaster. I'll be good for a while, and then something will happen. From the months of March till very beginning of June, um, it was many of my friends here know, because I was very honest with them. Maybe the beginning of April to June, I was in a really bad place, to the point where I was like extra therapy, and I had a plan that I didn't want to enact. And I have great friends who were very supportive, and I was able to go to therapy, and I was able to get my priorities back where they needed to be. So I'm doing much better now. But it's not all uncommon for people struggling with mental health issues to have been in this position.
And I will say that, well, a lot of it is chemical, a lot PTSD. I'm not going to discount that by any means. I have never experienced it, so I can't speak on it. But I will say that if it is a chemical imbalance, right, and someone has mental health, like you go on an antidepressant, they don't always work. You have to like go through different ones. If one isn't working, talk to your doctor and go to the next one. I
That's
think
true.
I did 4 or 5 before I finally found one that worked.
Yeah, everybody has
And
a different cocktail.
it's a mixture of like 3 or 4, like different, no, three different things that together help. It's not going to be a magic potion button to make it go away, but it fends off the darkest of the dark, shall I say.
I'm surprised, but people in the law enforcement, fire, and stuff like that, they have a high risk of suicide. And that will bring me to basically my story is when I was younger, my first love, who was a police officer, killed or unalived a person on the job. He was a teenager. It was justified, but it ruined him mentally to the point that he unalived himself because he couldn't deal with it. And this was back in the 90s.
And that was your former partner?
Yeah, we were a partner at the time we were broken up, but we were still friends. He happened to call me the night before, asked me if I could come over, and I said no because I got off of work. I was tired, and not knowing that was his plan. And the next day when I got home from work, my mom's like, "Yeah, I have some bad news for you," because it was all over the news since he was a cop.
Um, Real quick, Awen has been providing excellent information in my chat, just so everyone knows. Of course, there is a hotline *988 if you are struggling with these thoughts, that you can call that. Also, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they all have like a chat option. If you don't want to call, you can talk to someone that way. And anyone just put in here that there's a stigma that talking about SI will increase the desire. That's not true. Stats show that it helps, and I believe that because in any subject that is like dark or taboo, they always don't want people to talk about it. And every time, the one thing that helps improve is awareness, advocacy, talking about it, education. So that makes complete sense to me. For me, even no matter how much logically, I know that it's not my fault, that there's nothing I could have done. The guilt that it leaves behind is like, there's a lot of guilt. Like, I could have done something. Why didn't I know? Why didn't I get him help? That sort of thing.
Absolutely. For years, I blamed myself that I couldn't stop it because I didn't go to his house the night before when he called me. And I still have those thoughts 20 plus years later. When somebody does unalive himself, their pain ends at that moment. It's the family, the loved ones, the friends that suffer. And the the first thing is to always blame yourself, even though it's not our fault. It's an automatic thing to blame ourselves.
And it's not, and it absolutely isn't our fault. My husband, when we broke up, I had left and moved back up north. I was down in Florida at the time. There's a lot of stuff going on. Drug addiction. We were having money issues. Just, it was a mess. And the only thing I could do at that point for my own mental health and sanity was to leave. And I was out, I was at my dad's camp, and my mom was going over to pick up my dog because I was having my mom take my dog because he wasn't like taking care of the dog. And he knew my mom was coming in the morning, so he took a bunch of pills. And I didn't believe him that that was a serious attempt. I was like, but you knew my mom was coming. I really believed that he had done that to get me to go back home because that was something he would have done. I know now that that was most likely a legitimate attempt, and I deeply regret not believing that for him. You're allowed to be emotional, Ellie. That was, and mind you, that was 10 or 11 years ago. So most of the time when people do successfully take their own life, they've tried at least one other time before.
I know the guilt of my nephew's unaliving was partially what led me to do it myself, which was counterintuitive, I guess, or something like that. But he was real young and he was still living at home. And we had talked about him becoming my roommate so that he could some of his his parents,
Yeah.
and the last text I got from him was, I'll come over in the next few days and help you do a few things in your house. And I didn't hear from him the next day, which wasn't unusual, but later that day his mom showed up, or the next day I should say, that his mom at my door to tell me. So, but the guilt of not realizing that he was that close to, or that depressed, it just
Hmm.
it was partially one of the things that weighed down on me. I should You always ask that question, what could I have done?
Right.
Yeah.
And
So,
oh, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead,
I
Karen.
was going to say, because you're talking about the what could I have done? Is there anything? So, we all know we had a friend last year. Never outrightly discussed and said because we weren't close with her family, but based on the way things were going,
Hmm.
that's what happened. And the anniversary is next week. And I spent months, and I don't know if anyone else, if the girls know this, or like, I didn't send her the things I told her I was going to send her. I didn't, you know, to cheer her up, to because she was in a bad place due to like other things that were going on in her life. But you know, she had an immense loss in her life that changed her living, like her ability to function in the way that like Ellie, you lost your vision. She also had a handicap arise out of a situation, and it we all sat here and wondered, and like, what, you know none of us were in her life, but we had spent a year and a half talking daily, and I think all of us wish, you're talking to someone on a daily basis. If it's you, talk about it. Like, tell people that you're in a place,
Hmm.
and maybe one of them has a resource that you can go to, or knows of something, or can just come and sit with you and, you know, help you. And if you have friends, hey, you okay? This sounds serious, more serious than just like,
You're
I'm having a bad
you're
day,
really far
call
away,
me
Karen, so we
because.
can't I can't quite hear you. I don't know about anyone else.
No, I walked away from my phone for a second. My headset, I guess, loses its thing when I walk away. Just ask the question. Hey, are you, like, seriously ask the question. Don't dance around it.
Well, and the thing is that so one of the things that I know for myself, I'm sure many other people who struggle with mental health experiences, like I don't want to burden other people. Um, and it's one of those things that we have to like unlearn because if you have friends, like I told my friends, I'm not in a good place. Like I'm not going to harm myself, but those thoughts are there. And we talked about what we could do, like what was causing the issue and how we could fix it. And we came up with a plan, and that plan has worked. So you just have to, sometimes you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to ask for help.
It is so important because I started having those thoughts again maybe a year ago, that I just didn't want this life anymore. And then I met you guys, and just having people to talk to every day just to say hi, has helped me get out of that depression. So what Karen is saying is true. It's a constant. When you have people in your life, you don't feel as worthless.
I was
That's very true.
a feeling of being a burden to other people, and today I saw my new psychiatrist for the first time, and she asked me, has anyone outright made you feel that you were a burden? And I said, not that I can think of. And she said, well, if no one's made you feel that way, you have to release that for yourself. And if somebody has made you feel like you're a burden, you need to unburden yourself of them.
Yeah, that's that's an excellent. That's a new slogan. I'm gonna develop. If someone is treating me like I'm a burden, I'm gonna unburden myself of them. I think that's great.
Hell
A
yeah.
new way. Sorry, Lita, go ahead. Oh, you said hell yeah. So one of the other, like we all know, well, all of us probably know, and I don't want to assume that everybody who is watching this live might know, that we are all very much aware of is that while the demographic that happens to do actually unalive themselves the most are middle-aged white men, um, the community itself that is the most in danger is the 2S LGBTQIA community, which obviously is a topic that I talk about a lot. I am part of that community, and I was looking at um, some of the reasons why that might be true. So specifically, an interesting part is that bisexual and pansexual youth. It's the second leading cause of death among 10 10 to 24-year olds is self-unaliving. 1.8 million people in that group consider it, and then one every 45 seconds attempt it, and 45% of the LGBT2S LGBTQIA say that they've attempted. So, and statistics show that pansexual and bisexual youth have a higher rate of depression due to bullying, SA, and higher harm. 48% have considered, 27% have tried, versus gay and lesbian, where 37% have thought about it and 19% have tried. And among straight youth, 14% have thought about it and 6% have tried. And then transgender youth is 2 to 2.5 times percent more likely to try to consider or try to unalive themselves. And the reason why, there's a couple of risk factors. One of them, very important risk factors, which I think any of us here on this panel who is part of that community can talk about easily. It's called minority stress, which is a health theory that explains the mental health disparities experienced by the 2S LGBTQIA, and then the victimization, which turns into an internalization of that. So when there's four types of that stress, LGBTQI harm, discrimination, and housing instability, as well as parents attempting to force you to change being part of that community. I don't know about you, but I can definitely understand that.
That doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, especially with the world that it is today. We're probably going to see an uprise of it because of the different states not accepting people for who they are.
Yeah, so I shared an article, I don't know if you guys saw it. It is that they overturned a stay in a law that makes any doctor or parent giving gender affirming care to children a felony. So they are going to lose that. And that right there is going to up these numbers drastically in those states that are doing this to the children. You know, um, when there was also a study that showed that more young girls during they said during COVID, I don't know if it's because of the proximity that you're always around people or what something that would trigger it. I don't know what it is. That more young girls have entered precocious puberty during COVID. And you add all those things together where if it is a trans child that is, you know, going through puberty and it just feels wrong, they can't get the treatment, or starts puberty, they can't get the care that they need, and it will, you know, it's going to drive those numbers up. We're going to see those numbers rising, and it just
Yeah.
it kills me
Well, that's
to realize that it could be stopped, it could be prevented.
That's what, when we say, when we talk about a transgender genocide, that this is part of what we're talking about. And it's the study about this uh, health theory shows that each instance of any of these sorts of discriminations um, actually the more instances you have of it, the higher risk for self-unaliving you are. So when you think about like when and we're talking about within the transgender community, right? When somebody is saying something like, "Oh, they're just doing it for attention," they're not really transgender. They're just doing that for attention. Or when they purposely misgender you, and then they say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do that because of this reason," whatever the case may be. You're actually adding repeated. It's not considered trauma, but like you're compounding repeated instances of making it more likely for that person to end up self-unaliving.
I would say it is trauma that this world is
Wow.
putting on these children.
Yeah, it wears you down. It does. And then there's also um, like 36% of the 2S LGBTQI youth report that they've been physically threatened or harmed. There's also one of the other risk factors is rejection and lack of social support and affirming spaces. Thank you, Renee. These are the risk factors, right? So when we're talking about the transgender community, and they always, people are always like, "Well, why do they have so many mental health issues?" What are the people that ask those questions are the same people that are causing like a compounded lack of social support, which is why it happens.
You
Lita
know,
knows all about those people. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say that I have a family member that's trans, and his immediate family has pretty much disowned him. So I was left as the supportive uh, extended family, like cousins and stuff like that. And surprisingly, one of those people is my Vietnam vet um, generation, silent generation dad. And I think that's because my dad lost his grandson, and he knew the statistics, and he said, "Nope, I don't understand how anyone could, disown their child, or especially when the statistics are that high. I'd rather have them in my life than not."
And one third of just all of 2S LGBTQI youth says that they have been rejected by their parents. With a one third accepted, one third say they were rejected, and the other third said that they would not disclose their identity until they were adults. One third of parents in this world, in this country, would throw their kids out on the street. But we got to protect the kids, right?
That's the exact reason why when my nephew came out as trans and my parents didn't understand at first, the first only thing I ever said to them is there's so much hate in the rest of the world. He needs you guys to love and support him more than ever. And you may not have to understand, but still love and show love. And that is what he needs the most.
Yeah. Well, and so to bring it back to the topic of self-unaliving, right? These are risk factors that lead to self-unaliving, and that being try. It's not like a that being transgender is. It's not a mental illness that leads to self-unaliving. No, it just happens to be that um, families and society in the country. It's more accepting than it used to be, but there's still a lot of families that, won't accept their children being transgender. And then the bullying that happens from, you know, people who are transphobic, it all adds up.
The demographic is overwhelmingly more susceptible to the factors um, that do cause SI.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Bullying, ostracization. I don't know if I said that word right, but whatever. Um, I mean, just tonight, like in the live I had earlier. I mean, um, Sass. I don't know if you were around at the time, but there were people starting to like verbatim. They're saying go 42% yourself.
Yeah, I saw that the other night. I didn't know what it meant. Maji had to tell us.
I
Maji.
that live I saw.
And that's wild, right? Like what and by the
That's
way,
insane to me
it is. What
that someone would wish that upon someone.
and these are the same people that talk about Jesus all the time, by the way. Um, and just as an FYI, of course, to us LGBTQI youth of color have a higher rate than white LGBT youth, and Black and transgender reports that 59% have seriously considered and 26% attempt. So that's a demographic that's at much higher risk too. But like, why would anyone encourage someone to take their own life? Like, what is the ending their life early is to leave behind so much hurt and pain. I just don't know why you'd want to encourage someone to do that. I mean, people do say stuff because they feel brave behind a keyboard. It's gross.
I don't know about you, Lita, but I've been told to be careful and not be one of the 22.
That's for veterans?
Yeah,
Yeah,
22 a day. Yep.
that's another demographic of people that is really in danger. I've seen people say that to veterans, Dash. I'm sorry
I've
that
had
they
it
say that
said
to
to
you.
me.
As encouragement, not as right.
No, I've had it say it as a insult.
Yeah, like to
Like,
go make yourself part of
Oh, I
that
thought you said
yeah,
statistics.
don't be. I thought you said they were
No.
telling you
yeah.
don't be. Oh no,
They said it.
that's
They
disgusting.
said it in an argument to, you know, they've said it in other ways, but basically, I have had them say, "Don't be one of the 22," and they said it in a very derogatory comment.
That's horrible. People suck. Another situation of someone that I know or knew, I guess I should say, had a TBI, and
Mm.
it led. He was in a skiing accident. He had a TBI. Someone I graduated high school with. He had a TBI. It got to be. He had anger and just severe mood swings and crazy, like out of his own control, and the only option that he saw to stop his family's pain, unfortunately, brought more pain.
Well,
He
not
wanted to stop the pain he was causing to his family, and that was his option because his brain wasn't right. His brain was broken because of the TBI. And so if you have family that has that kind of an injury, pay attention, because he left behind three children and three young girls and a wife. And
that is sad.
it's just, it's devastating. And that I did the Out of the Darkness walk for in his honor that year. But
Well, and that's one of the that's one of the things that is I think is really important to stress. We've already talked about it a little bit, is that like when somebody takes their own life, they are leaving behind many people who are hurt and harmed by that. And if you know somebody, if it's a friend, a loved one, your spouse, a former spouse, their death is trauma for you. Okay, Miss Diesel. Um, it is ultimately trauma for you, and that is something that you should talk about, because it's important for people to understand the effects. Because, like, I know I've said it, and I think was it who else said it? I think Ellie said it. One of the reasons that I didn't, take my own life in the times that I thought about it was because I didn't want to leave behind harm to others. And it's not like a guilt thing, like guilting other people. It's just that I mean, it was guilt for me. I didn't want to cause that pain. You can't guilt people by saying what pain they'll take before they do it. I really hope that makes sense.
That's the guilt of what it would do to family, especially close. That's what made me phone and call 988. I because I had already taken a bunch of pills, and I looked at the wall and saw a picture of my family, and that's what forced me to pick up the phone and call the 988 number.
I am so glad that you had that you did that, Dash, because like I said before, I'm so glad you're still here. But it is, I mean, there is times in people's lives where they get to a certain point where that guilt isn't enough, and I hope that that never happens to anyone here. But I know that you know, I often think about like I would call my husband usually in late at night when I was driving. Or like if I was driving somewhere, it was nighttime, I'd call him and we would talk about what's going on in our life and like check in on each other. And there's oftentimes when that happens, we do got each other. You're right. There's oftentimes when that happens that I think about him and like in my head, I'm having a conversation with him that I would have had. And I just imagine him making jokes and laughing and us having that conversation. And I don't want anyone to have to be doing that for me. Like, if I'm not here, like thinking about those conversations in that way for me.
can I just say one that I do drives me nuts, and I hate it. The that saying when they say it's a permanent solution to attack.
Yeah,
Um, it's not necessarily, and that
you're
makes
right.
people think it's not always temporary.
That's true. I
So
mean,
it's minimizing it. I think the larger, the bigger picture. I think it minimizes what's actually going on with people, because mental illness is not temporary. It's
that's
really not.
true.
It's
A
often a
permanent
long
solution.
term. Yeah. Yeah, they say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
And I've said that myself, and I can see why, obviously there's stuff that goes on that people, that change is permanent. And so therefore that statement wouldn't work. It wouldn't be a reason to not self unalive. So I can see why that wouldn't be like a really good phrase. I've used it myself. I'm gonna not do that anymore.
Well, I think it's true for the individual, but maybe not for the collective. You know, like what's good for me is not always good for you, etc. That argument.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
probably true
so
too.
I mean, because I could probably tell myself that too. You know what I mean? Like this is a temporary problem. Because you know yourself. If something's a temporary problem, you know if it's temporary. So
Another aspect that I think that we could probably talk about, I don't know about you guys, but it's something that greatly affects um, anybody who's on, most people maybe, I think, who are on social media, and especially young people on social media, and that is cyberbullying and how that adds to self-unaliving.
My thought is that I see way too many news stories of 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds that just get bullied. So you just want to rage because I don't, it has to be taken more seriously.
I agree.
I don't think authorities take it as seriously as it should be. Oh, they're just kids. They're just kids being kids. No, they're not. They're causing harm.
there's no escape from it now. It happens at school. You go home. It happens online. Where it used to be just phone calls in the 80s, you know. It was a little bit simpler. It's not as simple anymore.
Oh, that's awesome, Squishy. You're awesome. I haven't seen you in forever.
Oh,
I need
thank
to
you,
catch up on the
Squishy.
crazy news.
And Renee said, I know a couple people who have experienced this. It's awful. Um, like one of the things, and I see adults doing it a lot, right? I've seen adults who are like who are cyberbullying other people or being cyberbullied themselves. But I often see adults who are cyberbullying other people dismiss cyberbullying as like a kid issue, or they don't take it seriously at all. But I really think it's important that when somebody tells you, like says, I'm not okay, when somebody says, for my mental health, I need to step out of this situation, people should respect that. Because if they don't, and that person then ends up taking their own life, uh, culpable for unaliving them. So, statistically speaking, when it comes to young people, 14.9% of adolescents have been cyberbullied, and 13.6% of adolescents have made a serious unaliving attempt. Not of those that have been bullied, just in general. Oh, thank you for the gifts. I appreciate it. I'm donating them to translifeline.org. Um, yeah, respecting others' boundaries is how to be a good human being. I don't, Ellie, do you have any thoughts on cyberbullying when it comes to?
Oh yeah. Um, Cyberbullying is so hard. I uh, I received a lot of it last year, um, or at the beginning of this year, and that's what put me in the biggest depression ever. Because you feel like you have no out, and these people just know how to hit your button so well to ruin you mentally.
Well,
It
and then
is it's gross.
I agree, Squishy. People on TikTok do forget that people are also people. I've often seen people who will dehumanize others, for the purposes of like a joke or clout. But sorry, Ellie, I planted a comment. I hope I didn't interrupt you. Um,
Oh no, you're fine.
you're right, right? They know what buttons to push because I've seen it happen to several people. Some of the people that are in this live watching or on this panel, in fact, where somebody is, let's say you're their friend, and then you talk about so you're someone's friend, and they know things about you, right? And then they decide that whatever thing they decide they're mad about is so much more important than your mental health and well-being that they'll then take that information and weaponize it against you.
I think that's fucking bullshit.
And it's disgusting it's disgusting behavior.
Well,
It's
and
not
that's the sort of
being a good
cyberbullying.
human.
No, and cyberbullying can lead to self-unaliving, and especially when you're taking someone's like vulnerabilities and weaponizing it, it's even worse. Maji said people yell about accountability. Would you rather keep pushing and see them actually harm themselves? And so, like, there's always a point when, because I've done call outs, right? We know that when you bring attention to a situation, you bring awareness to a situation, you ask for accountability, and there's always a point in that process where if that person doesn't feel that they've done anything wrong, you're not going to get that accountability. And there's no reason to keep pursuing it because all you're doing is causing more harm.
And the way that they do it is to isolate you away from people, makes that person who's isolated feel more vulnerable, more alone, and less self-worth. And that's where I was before I met you guys. That is the exact reason, is the cyberbullying ruined me mentally.
Well, that then, and Ellie can tell you, like, one of the reasons, like, I reached out to Ellie because I had noticed like certain patterns of behavior, not in Ellie, from other people where they were isolating people. And I was like, wait a minute, but I've seen this happen before. And I wasn't even close to Ellie when I interesting, but I recognized it as like a pattern. I was like, this is probably what happened to Ellie. And I reached out to Ellie and I was like, and I asked her a couple questions, and I was like, yeah, I think that, and I knew I was right, and I was. I really, I've been accused many times of like telling people who they can and not cannot be friends with, or messaging people and telling them that they had to block someone or how dare they talk to someone, and I can't remember doing that. I mean, there are people right now that I am friends with that I talk to on an almost daily basis that are friends with people who I will not speak to. And I have never once asked them to block that person or, stop talking to that person. Oh, Squishy, I think that's a great habit to have.
Squishy is one of the most amazing people there is. I loved my Squishy.
And so,
Although it's been a while since I've
oh,
gotten a neighbor update. We got to chat, girl.
I don't know, Lita, you have anything you want to throw in here? Oh, Anna, did I cut you off?
No, no, no.
Oh,
I'm good. I'm good.
Lita's been quiet.
Not at
Yeah.
the yeah. No, I just been kind of listening to everything and sort of processing, but like um, yeah, like I know everybody here is the victim of bullying, especially uh, over the last year. Um, like I think most of us met because of mutual bullies, and um,
Mm-hmm.
in the way that like uh, they try to get leverage over us through bullying. It like I mentioned earlier, it was like uh, they want to tell me to 42% myself. They're um, like I don't know what it is um, about those people, but they get a thrill over the idea that they have this kind of leverage, um, and, that they um, like any other kind of like violent act. Um, it's about control with them. It's about having um, this ability to dictate the narrative, to dictate everything that happens. So, uh, and we all know people like that. Um, We certainly saw something earlier tonight that could have been like in my case. I'm, I'm resilient because of spite mostly, but no, what happened to me earlier tonight could easily put somebody else over the edge,
It
and
could. It could.
um, that really worries me um,
Well,
because
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, and well, it's just like I've said before on my lives when people say, you know, why do you put yourself through? Why do you endure this? Because I want people to see what uh, that bullies can be endured. You know, I want to demonstrate resilience. I want to show resilience because somebody else who might not be um, as able to do that might just come in my live, see me just deflecting all of these people, and be like, hey, you know what? If that person can do that, I could probably do it too.
Kelsey, thank you. I see that Kelsey sent a cash app, which I'm donating to translifeline.org, so I really appreciate that. Um,
I was gonna say something about the mob mentality sometimes on here.
oh,
It's like one person starts bullying somebody and then a whole group of people start bullying them for absolutely no reason. Just because you don't, you know, you're friends with one person. Or even in like Lita's live, I've found that one person will start it and then all of a sudden a lot of people start saying the same kinds of things and it's like a mob.
it
It
is.
is 100% a mob mentality when people start going after you. And it's sad though because they don't just go after the person, they also go after the loved ones of the person on these apps.
They do. They do. And Lita is a person that is very resilient. That is absolutely true. Um, she does take a lot of bullying, and that happened. Like, yeah, some stuff that happened today could happen to someone else, and they would not be here anymore. And that is scary because, like, I don't think I've heard people say, well, don't if you don't want it, don't be on social media. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is to expect better. Tori, I'm so glad you're here, Tori, but
Hi,
we didn't
Tori.
bully you. We've had lots of conversations with you. You try to use your God to be transphobic. Welcome to the Sass Show. Tonight we're talking about self-unaliving. So I hope you stay and listen for how your comments can harm the transgender community.
Dating is not bullying.
Tori is a big fan of Lita, so
Oh,
I think Tori, honestly, I think Tori's hanging around. Tori does want to learn, but Tori doesn't know how to balance that with her the religious hate that she's been taught throughout her life. That is my theory because Tori is around a lot. I'm hoping that we can educate Tori. I mean that. I literally mean that. I want to get back to mob mentality because listen, I myself, it's so easy to fall into that, to be part of that mob. Um, whether you mean to or not, right? And that is part of what happens. Sometimes things get up beyond your control, and you have to be able to stop and say enough is enough, which is what I did.
That's what I did too.
You did.
yeah. And when, as hard as it is, walking away, ending engagement, what they say, because there was a period of time where I was obsessed with what people were saying about me. If they were saying things about me, what were they saying about me? And then I realized, why does it matter? People who love me because I'm me. What someone else says shouldn't matter, but it still does. It's
Well,
very, very hard to.
when it's on social media, it can be very difficult because it's now they're not just saying it to each other; they're saying it publicly, and so that makes it unfortunately gives what they have to say a little bit more weight because whether or not it's true doesn't really matter to what people believe it. She said, so this isn't aimed at anyone specifically, but the biggest bullies seem to always hide behind um, a veil of Christianity. And yes,
Well, that's the thing though, that when you hear these bullies come after you and they isolate you, and you keep on hearing these words about you that you're this, you're that, you start believing it. And it starts changing your mind about who you are as an individual person to the point that you even hate yourself.
one of the Renee said it's not my business what others think of me as her new motto or what they make fun of me about. One of the things that I have become increasingly aware of in the last few months, as I've been working on, like, I'm sure many of you see my page as a lot of advocacy, politics again, just doing this show to give people, all women and people assigned female at birth, a voice. It's just things that I'm trying to do better, like to make a difference that's good. Um, and a lot of the bullying actually increased when I did that. And I know that's because people are really they don't think that they can do better themselves, so they have to bring me down with them. And that's one of the things I often think about that really helped me change my mindset on a lot of the cyberbullying that was going on when I was in a dark place, was to constantly remind myself they want to pull me down, not because there's something wrong with me, but because there's something wrong with them and they don't know how to fix it. But I know Karen. Karen, yeah, Tori is transphobic. Um, Tori needs to listen. Tori, I don't listen. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back, everyone. I want to give Tori a little piece of education here. We're talking about self-unaliving awareness because it is Sunday was the 1 year anniversary of my husband taking his own life. We had been separated. One of the groups that are greatest at risk for self-unaliving is the 2S LGBTQIA community, with transgender people being 2 to 2.5% more likely to attempt to take their own life. And the reason for that is there's a health theory called minority stress, and it explains the health disparity between LGBT people and not LGBT people. That the victimization, like the transphobia, and the way that that gets internalized, compounds and produces negative mental health effects. So every time you come into a live to say that transgender people are biologically against God's will, you're creating harm to them. You can say that that's your belief, but you're hiding behind your Christianity to cause harm, and that harm compounds over time and creates mental health issues that lead people to self-unaliving. And if you think that within your religion that Jesus is going to forgive you for that when you won't even acknowledge that you're doing it, you are wrong. I don't know if Tori's still here. We'll see.
Well,
I
well
so want to
said.
be squished when I
Hey,
get older.
thank you, Gwen. Thank you. The also, by the way, Tori, because I know you like to talk about mental health stuff in those lives. Um, the highest group of people, the 2S LGBTQIA are most at risk because like of the percentage of those people to the percent that try to take their lives. But the highest demographic of people that take their life are uh, middle-aged white men. So you should probably advocate for their mental health. Well, go talk to them about why they're not, why they're seeking therapy. Hey Gwen, welcome to the Sass Show. We're having a very serious and probably tough topic for some people.
Yeah, I can I can relate to this very well. Um, I'm glad you're having this talk today.
Thank you. I did share a little bit about like I've had my own struggles um, with um, self unaliving. I've made the plan in three different points in my life. One of them was this spring. But I always, one of the things that I do for my own self is like when I get to that place, I tell people closest to me because I don't want to and I want to seek help. And then I talk to my therapist.
I So about this time last year, I was unemployed. This is me and jobs. My downfall my kryptonite is losing a job when it comes to um, SI. And it was about this time last year when I was dealing with a lot. I had just been turned down from like my fourth job interview, and somehow I had the forethought to try to reschedule a therapy appointment with my therapist. And for something in that text message spooked her, and she tried calling me, and she got a hold of me, and I didn't sound very well. And the next thing I know, she's talking. Um, I'm getting upset with them because they didn't put a put this plan together sooner, as far as going into a uh, outpatient hospital for mental health. And I spent all of September and October of last year in an outpatient mental health hospital, and it was good for me. Um, and then come and then come January, I finally started a new job, and then I lost that job in April. And there was some, just how I lost that job was just really weird. It was a work from home job, just like the last one, and just how HR got involved, and they knew I was transgender, and I think part of me thinks that they let me go because my ID and everything said female, and there was a call that was what instigated the whole thing. But after this call, I got a little too personal with my manager, and I let her know that I was trying to schedule a surgery, and I kind of let her know what it was about because this particular company I felt was pretty progressive. So, and then I had a job. I had a review with my manager like 3 days after this particular call that I had, and everything went fine in the review. Then the next week, I get this call from HR, and we're going over this bad customer service call that I had. And then the following Friday was a scheduled vacation day that I took, and they let me go because of that call. And I just couldn't believe it. It just floored me. And I really wanted to just end everything. I was having trouble scheduling the surgery, and a lot of you know I had that 3 weeks ago, finally. Um, but I did something really stupid. I sent that manager, and I sent it to her pretty much because I really felt that she had everything to do with my termination, and it had everything to do with me getting a little too personal with her. And I sent her a link for a site that had unaliving tips on it. The next thing I know, I'm getting my front door is being pounded on by a police officer, and I'm just upstairs in my bed in the fetal position. I just didn't want to move. I wasn't going to do anything, but I just wanted time to decompress. Somehow he got inside my home, um, and went from one police officer, ended up being 6 police officers in my bedroom, and me barricading myself in the corner, um, telling them that if they touch me, I'm going to sue them and all this stuff. And they wanted to take me to the hospital. And I said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not getting an ambulance. And we had this standoff upstairs in my bedroom. And I am not one for men, and you have some people might have enjoyed this, but there were 6 police officers in all their uniform in my bedroom, and I will never ever get that out of my head. Um, and we literally, I literally held my ground and told them I'm not getting an ambulance for about around. And I said, all I want to do is get back to sleep. Finally, their captain came. Their captain said, what if we gave you a ride to the hospital? Because it's protocol that we have to do this, that you have to go to the hospital to get checked out. And I said, fine, you guys can do that. What that did is it saved me the money of having the limo ride in the ambulance and having to pay the $5,000 or whatever it would have cost to have the ambulance um, take me there. And in the middle of all this, again, this happened back in April. The paramedics tried coming up to my bedroom, and I kept telling them, you guys get the F out of my bedroom. Nah, you guys have no clue what's going on in my head. And in the midst of all that, I'm in tears, and I'm telling every one of these police officers, I said, you have no idea what it's like to be transgender. You have no idea what it's like. And I had their full attention. And I hope, if anything, they left that scene with a different perspective on the transgender community. Long story short, and I hated to be long-winded with this, um, I got checked out. It was a very nice police officer that brought me to the hospital. Um, they said they had never done that before for anybody in the city that I lived in.
Well,
Um,
I am glad that you are still here, first and foremost. I'm glad that you're still with us, that we've gotten to know you. You come by here frequently, so I'm glad about that. And I hope that I do really hope that Tori was listening to your story. I muted her in the comments because which is just really presumptuous that Jesus didn't doesn't know that people are transgender and accept it. So I don't know why you're presuming, Tori. Um, but I just didn't feel like that was just really inappropriate. And again, more transphobia that ultimately leads. Maji said she left. I didn't block her. I hope she would stay when I muted her, but I guess she didn't. Anyway, you know what's? I mean, I'm so glad that you're here and that you were able to be okay. I think it's ridiculous that one of the factors that the reason why we have high unaliving rates here in the United States comes from like how our medical and mental health systems are, because the fact that like you didn't want to go get help, you didn't want to go to the hospital, but you didn't want to go in an ambulance because you wouldn't have been able to afford it. And like, how often are people like making the decision that because they can't pay enough money that they're not going to go and get help?
it wasn't necessarily, I mean, yes, it was a little bit about the money. The other thing was I just didn't, when it comes to being transgender, it's one of these things where your privacy is important. It's so
Hmm.
important. And I don't know what kind of training these paramedics had or whatever. I just didn't want them to touch me. I told them, I said, you guys have no idea how to treat me. I know without a doubt that you have no idea how to treat me. Not a clue.
When you don't know what you're
Um,
going to get at the emergency room either, right? Like you don't know if
exactly.
you're going to be dealing with transphobic people or not.
And that was something when I was in the hospital. I felt a little worried about one particular nurse there, and that's another story for another day. But yeah, you're right.
And people are afraid to go get help, be it for cost or because of transphobic religious people like Tori. That's not helping in any way. I would think that any Christian or human being on planet Earth, that their first priority when somebody is in a state of wanting to self-unalive would be, irregardless of their gender or sexuality or any race, religion, whatever, would be to help them through that crisis, not by telling them that they're wrong for being who they are. That doesn't seem logical to me.
No, you're right. If there's any takeaways, it's that you can't mess around with that particular subject with anybody. I will give that company some credit for how they handled that. They made the call to the sheriff's department in my town and said that they did a what do they call that, a
Wellness
wellness
check.
check on me and that kind of thing. But
It is mental health care is very stigmatized, Squishy. You're right. It's terrifying. I've never had a grippy sock vacation. I'm terrified to have that happen. I don't know that I need to be. I'm just saying that I am. And then there's the stigma, right? So when one of the situations that occurred recently, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, even though I mostly don't, because these people are relentless. With these group of people that thought it was a good idea to bully me, and show how desperate they are for my attention, was that they decided to diagnose me with mental health conditions that I don't have. One of them said I had anxiety disorder. She also claimed that I have histrionic personality disorder, and I'm just like, okay, we live in a country um, where we already have mental health stigmatized. So if I say I have PTSD, I have depression, I have anxiety, my integrity is called into question by many people, even though those are common mental health disorders to have and to have. And so when you try to paint somebody with a diagnosis when you're not even a mental health professional, all you're doing is adding to that stigma, which makes it harder for other people to go get treatment, or even that person themselves. Like if you legitimately believe somebody has a serious mental health disorder and you're then using that to bully them and try to silence them and whatever they thought they were going to accomplish with that,
Hmm.
you're harming them further.
Or making a joke out of it.
Right, because then you're
no,
making a joke out of mental health.
Or
Or
alienate them
making a
for your
joke out
own
of SI.
personal gain.
You're alienating them for your personal gain. Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately all just causing harm. Like there's a couple of people who have um, given me unaliving threats that I can think of, and their behavior and the way that they interact on the internet tells me that there's something going on there that I don't know about, that I don't, I'm not privy to their personal information. I can't make diagnoses, but I'm going to block them and not interact at all because I do not want to exasperate whatever it is that's making them behave in that very erotic way. Not erotic, erratic, sorry, way. And that's what it is, if you don't know. But somebody should probably ask them if they need help.
I really want to make a joke, but I'm not
Me,
going to.
That's this thing too. When those people were claiming you had personality disorders, um, I had a talk with Aowen about that, and she was telling me that like even professionals keep their distance when it comes to attempting to diagnose any of the personality disorders because um, they're difficult to diagnose and there's like they're easy to misdiagnose one for another. So like even the experts are like, yeah, no, in most
Well,
cases.
I'm
You
one
know,
of and one of the people, which is more disturbing than people may want to recognize, one of those people that were promoting this idea and using it as some sort of joke, advertises the fact that they supposedly have their degree in psychology. So they tried to lend their degree as a measure of expertise to fake mental health diagnosis because that's going to help people who have mental health disorders.
What what I learned out of the 2 months of outpatient um, mental health care that I got was everybody's struggling with something, and it doesn't matter if one person struggles just because it might sound like it's more severe than somebody else's doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. We're it's not, but the bonds that I with the people that were in my group that I got to meet with, every day for a while, then every other day for a while. We connected like you wouldn't believe. And I'm just saying that if anybody is ever put in a position where that is an option, um, I I would recommend it. I put up a lot of resistance, and I was highly upset with my psychiatrist when they recommended that, because I didn't think I needed it. But it helped put a lot of things in perspective for me at that particular time, um, and a lot of coping mechanisms. Unfortunately, they didn't really work several months later, but I wasn't expecting what went down to go down, and I didn't have anybody at that particular time to help me. But I would recommend it if it's an option for somebody if you're in that bad a shape.
Well, you know what? I also appreciate you sharing this your entire experience because there's a certain amount of vulnerability because of the stigma that can be attached to mental illness to share these struggles. And so, like, I greatly appreciate that. Aowen added in the comment section that one of the reasons that they don't like to diagnose that is because there's a stigma around that. If the client is told about having a personality disorder, and then insurance won't pay for it. So sometimes people get in their own way when it comes to having a personality disorder. I I know I personally have been in, when I was about 19 is when I first saw a therapist and a psychiatrist because of anxiety and stuff. So I've been treated for a long time. I've never been diagnosed with a personality disorder. I don't think it's just the stigma attached. But if even if I was even if I was diagnosed with a personality disorder, that diagnosis isn't something that should be weaponized on the internet as a joke. Because what's that going to lead to? The stigma that leads to self unaliving.
Well, and that brings up something too. Like the thing with personality disorders, from what I was able to learn, is that they are learned disorders. They're not necessarily something you're born with. It's somehow the neurotransmitters in your brain are wired in such a way, due to some sort of trauma that you were
Mm-hmm.
exposed to at some point in your life. And like I do have what they call I guess it's the personality disorder, but it's more like because I'm older, and this particular psychiatrist that I have, he doesn't care to have me get tested for autism, but it's about as close as you can get to autism without it being autism. And it's called obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And it does require like DBT therapy, which is a whole nother subject, which is expensive. And everywhere that offers it where I live, it's all out of pocket. And I don't have the money right now for that. So, but it can be controlled. And DBT was actually created back in the 80s for borderline personality disorder, which is typically diagnosed in. I think the statistics have come around with females.
Squishy just said that they get very uncomfortable in um, therapist office because their parents used it as punishment. That's really unfortunate. That weaponizing therapy is, don't do that to your children. I don't know if anyone in here has kids. Don't weaponize
Please
therapy.
don't do that to your
As
kids.
as somebody who worked in a adolescent behavioral health ward in a hospital, I can confirm that parents do it all the time
Oh
Now,
to
gosh.
kids.
crazy question. Do they? I've always thought that parents use therapy as a way, like, well, they don't want to deal. They don't want to have to figure out how to deal with the problem, so they put it on somebody else's shoulders. Is that like one of
Um,
the?
I would tell you that no, I wasn't. I was just. I'm not a mental health professional or anything like that. I was what's called a HUC, health unit coordinator, basically fancy name for the unit secretary.
Gotcha.
Um, so this is not medical quotes, but I would say 98% of the time it wasn't the child that was the problem.
Exactly. That's interesting. You said that.
Yeah, does someone want to rotate for Squishy?
I can.
I will because I got to go take my medication. It's time. So
Um, Ellie left. Everyone, three people said yeah. It's all right. If you need to go, Dash, that's okay too.
okay, yeah, I don't like being late taking my meds. So
Thanks for coming and
thank you for
sharing.
yeah, thank you
And
for
sharing
having me.
your voice and your experience with stuff because I know it's difficult. And so I really thank you.
All right,
Hello,
have a good night, all.
You
good
too.
night.
Hey,
Hi,
Dash.
Squishy.
Yeah, so here's the thing is I wanted to come up and kind of tell a little bit of like what I experienced of how my parents, and I'm going to preface this with I love my parents. I have learned to let a lot of that anger I have towards them from my upbringing go. But my parents did use therapy as a punishment. And what really confirmed it for me was the fact that I loved my therapist. And the second they found out that I was loving my therapist, that I enjoyed going to therapy, they pulled me from it. And
Mm.
it was a lot of the reasoning why my father had told me, we're putting you in therapy, was I was on a quote unquote self destructive path, is what he would put it. And looking back as an adult now, I have ADHD. My parents, unfortunately, at the time did not believe that ADHD was a real thing. It was an excuse to be lazy. It was an excuse, it was just a label that they wanted to throw on me, and it wasn't a thing. And so everything that they were claiming was self-destructive was actually me having symptoms of unmanaged, untreated ADHD. So they put me in therapy because here's the reality is when you don't help your child manage their ADHD, I'm not always saying medication is the right answer, but just basically like, oh, no, you can do it, not the tools to help manage or anything like that. Um, it can lead to depression. It can lead to self-unaliving thoughts. It can lead to lack of self-confidence. It's just you spiral down, unfortunately. And so when they put me in therapy, I think they saw the spiral but wasn't seeing what started the spiral. But it also was the fact that I averaged at a D for my grades, and they were thinking I was doing that on purpose.
Yeah, that's tough. And that's sort of like I mean, I'm glad you're doing good. That you're here to share that
Let me
because people can absolutely end up in a position where they get too frustrated, especially children.
let me guess, Squishy, you got a lot of is very smart, would do so much better if they just applied themselves.
Yeah, it was a lot of that and a lot of can't stop talking, needs to learn how to pay attention in class and whatnot. And it's so
Fidgeting and
funny.
yeah.
The pay attention to class one, I have a story that always cracks me up, like to this day. I was the kid that was like always drawing in class, or I was actually like sewing in like hand sewing in class, or knitting or something like that. I had to do something with my hands, and we were just learning about squares and exponents and whatnot. And the unit before was talking about number patterns. And my math teacher at the time did not think I was ever paying attention, would not believe that I was paying attention. She was focused on tests. And these entire, but this one day we had this opening, like problem, and it was find the number patterns because they were trying to apply the last unit to the current unit. And one of the questions nobody could figure out because it was like 2, 4, 3, 9, 4, 16, so on and so forth. Nobody could figure out the pattern. And I just kind of stop. I put my sewing down. I look up and go, really, guys? Really? And they're like, what? And it's like,
It's the
it's
exponential.
square.
Yeah.
Teacher never assumed I wasn't paying attention again after that.
Yeah, I had the similar. I was reading a second book in my lap during reading class, and she called on me and thought I wouldn't get the answer right,
Same.
and I did.
See,
I was
I was gonna say being a lot of times like not if your ADHD isn't understood when you're younger, it's just and I think that's kind of where I'm at with things because I was actually told that not borderline, obsessive compulsive personality disorder has a component of impulsiveness and outburst associated with it, and because I was so misunderstood growing up with ADHD and I wasn't ever living up to my quote unquote potential, they think that the obsessive compulsive personality disorder stems from all of that, like not living up to my potential and being misunderstood as a kid.
And, that's so interesting because of the fact that it's easy to find the symptoms. Either don't fully understand what something is, like ADHD or autism or personality disorders. It's easy to find the symptom and associate it with something you might know and not realize that this is actually where this could be coming from.
Exactly.
Because
well, and
a
that's
lot of symptoms mimic each other. Depression and ADHD will mimic bipolar disorder because your depression is the lows and the ADHD is the highs. Then it's very, very difficult to, and some people may have both, or you may only have one and it's mimicked. You may have bipolar and they think they treat you for ADHD, or you have, so it's a very fine line of what it could be, and if you treat the wrong one, it could, whatever's left untreated can lead to, again, unaliving attempts.
Yep.
I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and have us talk a little bit about self-unaliving prevention because I want to end the live in about 15 minutes. Thank you so much, Squishy, for talking about your experience with parents and how they use therapy. I think so many of us people assigned female at birth, at least so many people that I know, have very similar stories about, especially when it comes to ADHD and diagnosis, because like I wasn't diagnosed, and the way that that affected me, and not having that knowledge of how to manage it, I just imagine how much different my life would be if I had it.
Definitely. And here's the thing is it's also one of those things. I don't think a lot of parents realize that if they don't pursue, if somebody suggests, hey, you might want to get your kid checked out for this seems like this, if they don't pursue it, that kid's going to potentially build their own coping mechanisms that may not be the healthiest or may not be
Hmm.
the best way to handle it. And they take that into adulthood. And, I'm very lucky where I went, oh, I have this. And I started throwing myself into it and whatnot. But at the same time, because my parents would not let me be officially diagnosed as it, I'm actually having a hard time as an adult being able to get a doctor to believe me in saying, I have this. I know I have this. I've done, I hyper focused on ADHD without realizing that was what I was doing. And realized it. I went through all of the known methods to work beyond medication. And sometimes medication is what people need. I'm not saying automatically, oh, you have this, here's a pill, stop having it, but sometimes medication is a tool to help you do it. And as an adult, something like autism or ADHD, because it's so stigmatized that even the doctors have it stigmatized, they will not
Yes,
give you any help for it.
and that definitely doesn't help because like a lot of some of the misdiagnosis that can happen when you have ADHD, like I a lot of anxiety that I have was most likely ADHD. A lot of I haven't been on, not that there's a problem with it, be on antidepressants all the time. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with antidepressants. I haven't been on them for almost a year now with guidance from my doctor. I wanted to see if I could, manage a lot of just um I'm currently not on any antidepressants, and I think it's because of having my ADHD treated. So, like, the way that those things affect each other are really important. I haven't discussed passive unaliving ideations. I don't know what that means.
Can I touch on that one a little bit then?
Yes.
I can as well if yeah.
Lita, go ahead. You go ahead and take it first then.
All right. So passive SI is actually something that happened that sort of was my initial triggering moment into what I later found were like uh, what ultimately led to me seeking treatment for the first time. Um, so I was driving to work. It was January. And at the time, I was living in Providence, Rhode Island, but I was working in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I would make a weekly commute up on Tuesday and work until Thursday. That was my full-time job. So um, somewhere around 4:30 in the morning, I'm driving up the highway, and uh, I hit some black ice, and suddenly my car is spinning, and I am staring into the back of a flatbed truck. And I recovered it, but then I was upset. I was like angry. I was like I'm mad at myself for recovering, for not just letting the worst happen. And that is that was the moment where crisis line was like, okay, I need to address this. So that's my story.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I just like looked up a definition and that it's feeling and thoughts of wanting to unalive though without actually planning. Um, and I feel like your description of an event was really helpful. Like you didn't have a plan, but you'd be okay with it happening. That does make sense. Squishy, you said that you want to talk about it too?
Yeah, and so for those who like have never like talked to me before, a little bit of context that's important to this is I am Gen Z. I am 24 years old. I am an older Gen Z. My generation and a little bit of the millennials too, I've noticed, we will make a lot of jokes about SI. And it's a horrible thing if you like really think about it, but it's one of those things that we make a lot of jokes about it. And it is one of those things that passive is so difficult to handle and to see from the outside for my generation and the millennials and so on, because we make so many dark jokes about it. And when I had thoughts of it, and what really like catapulted me into it, and I almost wouldn't have been here today because of it, was when I came out of the closet to the world and whatnot, and I had a loved one basically tell me that I'm not allowed to be bi because his job wouldn't allow it and his job would lose it. I really started and realizing that I really didn't care if it actually happened to me or not. I never really planned it. I mean, I made jokes of like taking pills and made jokes of like, oh, I'm going to go and run through traffic and see what happens. And, it's horrible, but I was making jokes about it and everyone read it off as jokes. It also becomes such a hard thing because of the fact that my entire generation was horrible about making jokes about it. And so they're like, oh, ha ha, funny, funny, funny. And unfortunately, with that, there's a lot of people who have that issue and realize that they feel like that if they actually did unalive through SI or any other method, as horrible as that sounds, they're wondering if anybody would really notice or care. And it becomes one of those things of it becomes more encouraged mentally, I guess is the best way to put it.
So, so along that lines, I just have a question. I don't know if this is the same. Is it? And there's a name for it, and I can't think of what the word is. It's some. It's a. I think I want to say it's like a German word, where you're just like you'll be driving. You're going across a bridge, or you're going, and you're like, what would it be? I wonder what would happen if I just drove off the side of this bridge, or drove off this cliff, or
Well,
drove.
here's the clubs.
But but there's an actual name because it's a common thing. You're not necessarily wanting to unalive. It's like a what would happen kind of thing. But when I have, that's the kind of things that I think about.
The word, I don't know what it is, but it means looking into the darkness is what it translates to, but I can't think of what the word is.
Yeah,
I'll
I can't
remember
think of
it
what
at
the word
a
is.
really inopportune moment.
I when I was preparing for my surgery, I kept telling myself that I was okay if I didn't make it through surgery. I was I'm not sure if that was a calming thing for me because I was a little anxious. Um, but that was my mindset. I was like, I don't care if I don't come out on the other side.
I can relate to that. A lot of those, I think that a lot of that is probably more common than people will acknowledge. And one of the things that is important for like prevention is to talk about it. Advocacy. No, that's not quite. I can't remember what it is. It's the same. It's the same thing of when you look over into Niagara Falls and you're like, oh, I could just fall in. There's another word for it. Is
Yeah.
someone playing Among Us? I don't think so.
Schadenfreude is what's popping in my head, but I know that's the wrong word.
Yeah,
It's
that's not it.
something like that, though. It's. I think it's a German word.
But I am going to switch to like talking about some prevention. So like some of the ways that you can look up about self-unaliving prevention, a lot of it comes down to a couple of really basic things. One is economics, like improving financial security and making sure people have stable housing would reduce the rates of self-unaliving. Um, you know, community, um, making sure mental health is covered in insurance policies, making sure providers are available. Like it's not just a matter of whether or not mental health services are adequately covered, it's whether or not you can get access to a provider. Because I know finding a psychologist that took my insurance was almost impossible. In fact, I just gave up and I just pay out of pocket. Um, Especially in like rural areas, it can be quite an issue. And then um, and the other piece of it that comes in through like community that I was talking about, like making sure that you're promoting healthy uh, relationships with people. You want to make sure that there are support groups, that we are using support social and emotional learning programs, teaching ourselves and our younger generation to how to manage their emotions is really important because I know nobody taught me. Like it was be quiet or you're in trouble or whatever the case may be. And so teaching children how to manage their emotions is going to vastly improve mental health, which will improve unaliving rates and like education programs, making sure people have accepting environments, which is why the 2S LGBTQI have higher rates is because of the lack of acceptance. So a lot of it is community, financial, and access to care for self-unaliving prevention.
If I
Yeah.
can, one of the other things that personally has helped me, um, so I am very financially messed up. Like, I can barely afford my rent, and whatnot. It's one of the hardest things to do. Um, and at one point in time, like around my trailer, I was putting positive words like awesome, amazing, you're beautiful. Even if you don't believe it when you first start it or don't apply it to yourself, because a lot of people who have those types of thoughts, they'll believe it for every other person in the entire world, but will not accept it themselves. Surround yourself by it, and slowly your mindset will start to change. And it's not an immediate thing, and it's not a, instantly better. And you're still going to have the hard days, but it, toxicity breeds toxicity is what I've always learned. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things is you need to stop being toxic to yourself. And so, even as corny as it sounds, remind yourself that with positivity, you're awesome, you're amazing, you're beautiful, you know, you've accomplished this and whatnot. And the way that I started getting into that mindset was the fact of like, every morning I would wake up and I'd look around and I'd think of 5 things that I kind of like. Like, I have a dragon lamp. That's kind of cool. I have a TV. That's cool. I love this show, and so on and so forth. It's going to sound so corny and you're not going to believe it it took me about 6 months to slowly even begin to realize that I was believing it.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps. And even then, the other positivity is go up to a stranger and say something positive to them and
Yes.
watch their reaction. because to I've been in a dark place for the last 2 months. And I got to the point where I go to live hopping, and it's like, if nobody told you today, you are amazing, you are strong for overcoming your struggles. I don't know who these people are from Adam's House Cat, but it's something that you realize how many people are struggling, and that positivity just makes their day. And
Hmm.
eventually, them being excited and like amazed and happy about it slowly will reflect back onto you. It's something that works for me. Obviously, it's not going to work for everybody, but it is something to at least try.
I love that. I don't do a lot of self-affirmation, but I frequently yell at myself and my friends and my partners to about self-deprecating. Because like if you're putting yourself down, and I try to remember not to do it to myself, like how are you going to expect other people to lift you up? And so, pressed very sad and remind your friends, right? So while I work to tell myself more positive things, one of the things that I started doing, and it's so cheesy, and I know it's cheesy, I don't care. When I'm making my videos, I make a video most days, like the first video I make of the day. I say, "Hi friends, I hope everyone's having a great day today." I'm not just like, first of all, I'm saying hi to friends because it's welcoming, inviting, and it's also an inclusive language. It's gender neutral. Um, and I'm wishing everyone have a great day today, genuinely, myself and everyone that I'm talking to be something a little positive. Like I legitimately hope everyone has a great day. And it's cheesy, I know, but I'm doing that to very specifically to promote like my own positive self thoughts and hopefully give somebody else a little bit of positivity for their day. No, kidding.
So here is
You,
the other thing, and so I'm not saying this like as a self promotion or anything, but if you notice, almost every video, I'm ADHD, and so sometimes it slips my mind. But if you read the captions, I put "love yourself," period, always. And the reasoning why is a lot of people get so caught up in themselves in the past. Like they're struggling with addiction, they're
Hmm.
struggling with they had depression, they're struggling with, they had to end a friendship. It doesn't matter. Um, you still need to love that person. And the reasoning why is because if you were not that person you were in the past, you wouldn't be who you are today. And you wouldn't have accomplished what you have accomplished today if you were not that person in the past. And it's one of those things that I started doing that, and I made that my like little catchphrase or whatever. And because it was one of those, I needed to learn that lesson. And I know that if I needed to learn a lesson, somebody else in the world also needs to learn that lesson. And it's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize, when you have thoughts of SI, you feel so isolated and you feel like you're the only one in the world going through it. Start talking because you'll find out you are not the only one going through this. And if you have somebody going through a similar struggle, build a team, build a team with it, and get each other through it because SI is one of the hardest things to handle by yourself.
Hmm. You absolutely do have to have people that you can reach out to, right? Like you've got to have someone, um, a support system. Listen, my DMs are open. I'm supportive for anyone. I try to be a good friend, and I know that when I need help, there are people that I can reach out to. Anna says that hers are open too.
Mine as well.
Yep, Pressberry said we've talked about this, us having a support group. It's true, we have. I want the one thing that I've strived for since I've been on this app is to make sure that there I know what you meant. That I try to be someone that I feel that people can come to. And so there are some people that would not be true, but a lot of people do feel that way. And so, if my DMs are open if you need an ear. And you know what, Maji, I agree with that too. Maji said someone could be my worst hater, and if I see they need an ear, I'm willing to listen. I have been in a position where somebody had been very much not kind to me, and they reached out, and I, listened to them because they were reaching out for a reason. And so it's always important to remember that you don't always know what people are going through, and sometimes you might be the thing that makes the difference. That does have to be balanced though, because you can't help other people if you can't help yourself. On that note, I'm going to wrap up this live. I do want to tell everyone I'm working on a little project. I'm working on a little project today. Um, and I'm gonna sell these on the internet somehow, and I'm gonna put half of the proceeds from this little thing that I'm working on are going to go to a domestic violence charity. So I'm just going to give y'all a little sneak peek, and I'm not going to tell you what it is until it's finished, and then I'm going to sell them on the internet, and half the proceeds are going to a domestic violence charity. This is your this is very cute. All right.
The new just going,
Uh,
I just baby.
Hey, before the show ends, can I steal the floor for like 2 minutes?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay,
Nita, real
so
quick. I'm fixing to have to go bounce though, so I wanted to give my normal exit, which is go forth, stay strong, and love yourself always. And I will see you guys later. Bye.
uh, uh, um,
Bye, Squeaky.
so hi, Robin.
Hello, last minute
So
appearance.
that's okay. Any appearance is good.
Look, I just wanted to say I'm
Um,
pretty sure your internet idea was my idea.
okay, so just everybody and people in the comments too. How is everybody feeling right now? Like,
I
because
feel like we had a good conversation, but that's a great question.
like it's it's a heavy topic, and because a lot of us um, have gone through it and have past trauma associated with it. Um, I first just want to say like, and I mean everybody, Anna, Karen, Gwen, like, how are you? Like, are you doing okay? Are you um,
Because of the
having
live or because or in general?
just well in both, I
Right at this
guess.
moment, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Right now, right now for some reason exhaustion just set in. This was deep tonight.
Um, so I'm just gonna share a couple of uh, and recommended. I just mentioned, if you feel yourself spiraling, all right, you try to use like grounding and centering techniques. Um, if you get any sensation that um, you know you might have a trigger go off or something like that, eat something, drink water. You get um, this sort of evolutionary characteristic where when we're in danger, we usually don't eat or drink. So you kind of calm your mind down by drinking water or eating something because your brain will be like, oh, I'm eating, so I'm not in danger. And don't try to block out feelings you are having. Um, it's like if I tell you not to think about something, first thing you're going to do is think about it. So um, she puts it as honor the thoughts and feelings and don't push them away and try to forget. That'll make things worse. As Sass said, talk to a friend, talk to a counselor, whoever you need to talk to. Um, be good to yourself and to your body. Um, and yeah, like my DMs are open to all of you as well. But just yeah, I just want everybody to just have this moment, take a breath, and be like, okay, we just endured, like, well, not, that's a bad word to use, but like this live, we're talking about a very sensitive subject that's affected us all. So um, just good to remind yourself that um, we're all here for each other.
That's awesome. I think that be kind. Maji said if this is your um, cultural, if this is your beliefs, talk sisters. I think that was a great point, Nita, that this is a tough topic. And so if this topic, if you find yourself thinking that it's triggering in some sort of way, definitely be mindful. Please reach out to you can reach out to me or someone that you're close to that you feel comfortable talking to. Also, and Jen said in Judge Judy's name, amen. Also, star 988 is the self-unaliving hotline. So if anyone needs that as a resource, please know you can use that as well. And Robin, if you wanted to add anything else, I muted you because your background noises were scratchy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I coming in super last second, but just like awesome on all of you guys for being supportive of each other like this.
We support you too. And you know what? You support me all the time.
I sure do.
Yeah. So, one thing I did want to mention is, I don't know if it's still in your bio, if you're gonna put it back up, I will be adding the resources to the link tree.
Yes, it should still be in my bio. After every Sass show, I do post it on YouTube. I also will have we update our the link tree in my bio. Karen does that for us. So all the resources that we talked about tonight will be in there. Yeah, thank you. That is very sad that the VA told you that.
No, I think the regular hotline basically told them to go talk to the VA.
Wow.
I mean, either way, that is not a good thing.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. I have to look that information up. But I am going to go ahead and end the live now. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you everyone who shared their stories and their
Thank you.
experiences.
This was
Yes,
this was
you're
good.
welcome. Thank you. It's a very vulnerable topic, and there is a lot of stigma attached to it. So I really appreciate it. I'll look that up. Uh, they said that there's a press release available, so we can look that information up and talk about that later. And I hope everyone has a great night.
Have
Good
a good
night,
one.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.